Hello everyone, I Kuldeep Sharma welcome you all to today's session of Daily News Analysis, where we are going to look at the important news from the Hindu newspaper as well as the Indian Express. So before I begin this today's session, I would like to wish all of you all the best who are going to give your exam next year. So just last minute advice which I give in the message also was that try to stay calm, try to believe in yourself and try to attempt all the 120 questions, and I believe victory would be yours if you are able to stay calm and attempt all the questions there. Okay, so with this message and with this particular best wishes, I would like to start today's session. Okay, so let's start with the first news. So first news which has come in the Hindu newspaper is regarding your GDP growth, and it's not a good news, but our GDP growth has plummeted and it is at a quarters loss. 7 quarters basically. Your GDP is calculated quarterly, so every quarter, every 3 months you get a particular reading. So out of the last 7 quarters, which is basically your 21 months, this has been the lowest growth rate of GDP. Okay, again, although this is also important for next years, but today I'm going to focus on those particular news items and those particular news only, where which can be asked in yeah, tomorrow's exam also. Okay, so this is regarding your GDP growth rate. So GDP growth rate is for this quarter is going to be 5.4. In the last quarter it was 5.4, and moreover the breakdown has been that there has been a good news in the agriculture sector, where there was a increase in the agriculture GDP sectoral growth. Okay, and also in the services sector there was also a GDP growth rate. But when we look at the industrial sector, there has been a downfall. There is a downfall in GDP growth rate in all the subsectors of industry. For example, your mining, your manufacturing have been the worst hit when it's come to GDP growth. So in our previous sector, your mining and manufacturing have been the worst performers. Okay, now if I talk to you about the basics of GDP, you should know this, that these kind of questions have come up in previous year examination also. Specifically for your AILET examination last year, there was a question regarding what is the definition of GDP, and four definition was there. You had to just choose the correct definition. So the simple definition of GDP is, it is basically the monetary value of all goods and services, all final goods and services. Final word is important. Final goods and services produced in an economy, produced in an economy in a financial year. So हम कंट्रीज का जो मेजरमेंट करते हैं जीडीपी का, वो फाइनेंशियल में करते हैं, विच इज यूजली फ्रॉम 1 अप्रैल टू 31 मार्च। तो अगर आप टैक्स भी जब 18 प्लस होके आप टैक्स भी पे करते हो, या जब भी आपकी इनकम होती है और आप टैक्स रिटर्न्स फाइल करना स्टार्ट करते हो, you file it for the period of 1st April to 31st March only. So this is the definition of GDP. It is a monetary value of all final goods. Why we use the final words? Why we use final in front of goods and services? Because we do not include the price or the value of intermediary goods and services which have been produced in an economy in a financial. Okay, so there are certain methods you can calculate GDP, and the most common the method which is used by the government also is the expenditure method, where we add on all the expenditures by different sectors of the economy. So C plus I plus G plus NX is a formula, where C stands for consumption expenditure. It stands for consumption expenditure. What is consumption expenditure? So consumption expenditure is basically investment done by people like you and I, basically the residential sector, the consumer sector, whatever the consumption done by the consumer sector, that is part of the consumption expenditure. Next is I stands for investment. Investment is basically the expenditure done by the private sector, the companies. So the main expenditure of companies basically on the investment. Third is your government sector, which is basically the government expenditure. And fourth is your exports minus imports. Okay, and if I add all the expenditure by these four sectors, if I add all of these four, what I'll get is country's GDP. So this is one method of calculation of GDP. The other method is the income method. I basically add on the income from all the sectors. And the third method is the value addition method, which is basically whatever all the, if I calculate the value addition by all the firms. So whatever sales they have done, I subtracted from the cost of their production, then I can find the value addition of a particular firm. And if I add the value addition of all the firms in an economy, I will find the GDP of the country. So these are different ways by which I can calculate the GDP. And in India, if I talk about what government authority is responsible for calculating the GDP or giving me with the data of GDP, so it is your National Statistic Office, which is an office under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. So the most authentic data, or the data which is used by the by your government in policy making, is basically the data provided by NSO. Moreover, apart from NSO, various other government organization as well as international organization and private organization also give different GDP growth data also. But the most authentic is given by the NSO, and apart from it, RBI also provides it. Okay, and as per RBI, then the this quarter, not this quarter, but this year's annual growth rate is going to be 7.2% for the financial year of 24-25. Okay, for the financial year of 24-25, which is basically whenever I say that the financial year, this financial year is basically from 1st of April 2024 to 31st of March of 2025. Okay, in other words, I would call it as financial year 2025. Okay, so it's just for, because many students get confused when it is written 24-25, what period I'm talking about. If I say financial 25, is it starting from 1st April 2025, or is it starting, or is it ending on 31st of March 2025? So this is what a financial year looks like. Okay, so this is regarding this, and you should know this, that we are more concerned about our real GDP growth rate, and real GDP is basically the GDP which has been inflation adjusted. So from the nominal GDP, if I subtract the inflation, then I'll get the nominal GDP, sorry, real GDP. So that becomes also important. And for inflation adjustment, the year which I use is the base year of 2011 and 12. Okay, so the base year for GDP calculation is 2011-12, which I am currently also using. I means the government is currently also using this same formula only. Okay, so this is regarding the GDP and the basics of GDP. Okay. Moving on to the next news. So next news is basically success of your global plastic treaty. The global plastic treaty, which has now been finalized, not finalized, but the draft has been finalized. Okay, so draft of global plastic treaty, which was in works for the last 2 3 years now, 2 years now. So this has now been finalized, and for some it looks like that at least it's better. It's something better than nothing, and for some people it believes that much of our efforts has been wasted because we have not been able to have something constructive for banning plastic in the world. However, we are more interested in what is the history of this global plastic treaty. So we have discussed this earlier also, but United Nations Environment Assembly passed a resolution to end plastic pollution in the year 2022. So to fulfill the requirement of this resolution, we decided to conduct regular meetings so that we can finalize a global plastic treaty to eliminate plastic. Okay, and for this we started to conduct different kind of meeting. For example, first such intergovernmental negotiation committee first meeting took place in Uruguay in Punta del Este. Punta del Este. So the first meeting took place in Punta del Este in Uruguay. It began from there. Then we had the second round of negotiation, INC2. It was held in Paris in France. Then we had the third round of meeting, which took place in Nairobi, Kenya, which is the headquarter of United Nations Environment Program. Then the fourth one, which took place this year only, took place in Ottawa in Canada. And finally, the current, which has just got completed, is your Busan, South Korea. Okay, so five round of negotiation has taken place. Different countries, many countries, about all the UN all the important UN members were part of these negotiations. And finally, we have a draft of global plastic treaty where certain, as of now, we have not decided on a particular year, but on certain targets on how we can reduce the plastic production as well as plastic waste in the world. However, it is not a final global plastic treaty, and there are some shortcomings also. For example, this draft global plastic treaty does not talks about ban or reduction on primary polymer products and countries like India and China have been at the forefront of not banning these polymer plastic products because a lot of their industries directly or indirectly depend on these products. So this is a shortcoming of this particular draft GTP, that it does not talks about ban or reduction on primary polymer plastic production. Moreover, they have also protested, India, China, and other countries have protested against including any reduction of hazardous plastic regulation, regulation of hazardous plastic. And the simple reason which they have quoted, so the reason which they have quoted is that this hazardous plastic regulation, etc., are regulated by other treaties like Rotterdam Convention. We have a Rotterdam Convention, we have a Basel Convention, and we also have a Stockholm Convention. So we have three convention which deals with plastic waste directly or indirectly also. So that's why they have not incorporated in the Global Plastic Treaty. So let's understand these convention. So these can be explained in one lines also, and I'm just giving you these. The objective of these particular convention is because they can be asked in this year exam also. For example, Rotterdam Convention basically deals with prior informed consent, prior informed consent, for trade in certain chemicals in pesticide. So it is under the Rotterdam Convention that certain chemicals and pesticides, although they can be traded, but there needs to be a prior informed consent of the receiving country. So let's say there is country A and country B. There is a company in country A which produce certain chemicals, and that chemical is listed in Rotterdam Convention. Then it is required. So if a company from company A wants to trade these chemicals with a company trade these chemicals with company B, then companies B's government should be informed before those particular chemicals or pesticides can be written to that country, so that if the government of country B does not want those chemicals to enter their particular country, they can simply say no for that particular product. So this is basically a procedure requirement for any kind of exports import. Next is your Basel Convention. So just like Rotterdam Convention, Basel Convention also deals with your trade of different kinds of hazardous wastes. So it basically lays down certain standards for transboundary movement of hazardous waste, hazardous waste, solid waste, and municipal waste. Solid waste and municipal waste. And I would say that this is a very good initiative because it is very much possible that there is a poor African country and its government is very, very corrupt. So it does not care about the well-being of the people. So what it can do, it can enter into a contract with a developed country or a rich country, wherein the rich country offers some monetary gains to a few people. And it would what it will do, that rather than disposing of the waste, rather than producing and disposing of the waste in their own country, they will produce the waste and then they will transfer that particular waste to a poor country for either just disposing of it of there, or not even trying to dispose it of, but storing it in some poor country also. So this Basel Convention basically lays down certain standards that if you have to do a transferring movement, I'm just giving you an example, then you have to first treat that hazardous waste and then only you can transfer it, and that there would also be another set of regulation which needs to be followed by that particular country also. And the third one is your Stockholm Convention. This particular convention has been very important in banning certain kinds of chemicals and and organic pollutants, specifically your POPs. POP stands for your persistent organic pollutants. So this is a very important convention. If you have heard of this particular POP, which is known as DDT. DDT is a very common pesticide which was used in your which was used in agriculture, but it leads to many kind of nervous system diseases, nervous system breakdowns, etc. So this has now been banned under the Stockholm Convention. So this particular treaty, Stockholm Convention, the main agenda is to ban usage of certain kind of persistent organic pollutant, which can be very dangerous for a person's health. Okay, so this is regarding our global plastic treaty. So five INCs, the draft, the resolution in 2022, and draft GDP, which has been finalized, does not talk about primary polymer plastic products, banning of primary polymer plastic products, as well as it talks about your hazardous plastic regulations also, uh, which has also not been incorporated because of protest by countries like India, China, etc., which are very much dependent on these kind of productions. Okay, we have also discussed the Rotterdam Convention, Basel Convention, Stockholm Convention. So these are nothing, there is nothing new about these conventions. So these can be asked in your exams also. Okay, moving on to the next news. So a very important news of national significance, which is basically the Sambal Masjid Row, which is ongoing in the state of Uttar Pradesh right now. And right now, Supreme Court has ordered officials to be totally neutral in this Sambal Masjid Row, as well as it has asked the trial court to stay the judgment to not carry on with the civil suit unless the High Court decide on the maintainability of that particular civil suit, and then only proceed with the next set of your trial procedure. Okay, so because Samal Masjid is in news, I thought I'll study about it and let you know some important facts about this masjid. So Samal Masjid is basically the Shahi Jama Masjid. So the name of Samal Masjid is Shahi Jama Masjid, and this is another such mosque which is believed, not believed, but it is actually proven that it was also built by one of Babur's official commander only in the year 1526. So this is the year when Babur came to India. This was the time period when Babur came. So in 1526, Babur came to Sambal, and he ordered one of his officials, and the name of the official was Hindu Beg. So that was the name of the official who is known as the not actually the constructor, but who was the one who has authorized the construction of the Shahi Jama Masjid in Sambal. And what is the claim in the Sambal Masjid? So the claim is that this particular temple, this particular masjid has been built after destroying a very famous Sri Harihar temple. Sri Harihar temple in Sambal, which is believed to be the birthplace of Kalki, which is going to be the 10th avatar of Vishnu in Kali Yuga. So Kalki is supposed to be the 10th avatar of Lord Vishnu, and he is the one who's going to protect mankind when the worst of Kali Yuga is going to come forward. And it is believed that he is going to emerge, or he is going to come up in this particular place only, Sambhal. And the place from where he is going to come, or where he is going to give his darshan, is basically the Sri Harihar temple in located in Sambhal only. In Samal only. So what is special about the Samal Masjid? So it is the oldest surviving Mughal mosque. So इससे पुराना कोई भी मुगल पीरियड का मॉस्क नहीं है. Obviously it is from the initiations of Mughals only. So when Babur was the first Mughal king of India. So basically, and because it was built by Babur only. So this is the oldest surviving Mughal mosque. And this oldest surviving Mughal mosque is also a protected monument. It is also a protected monument of ASI, by Archaeological Survey of India. So it is a protected monument by ASI, and we have already discussed that it was built by Hindu Beg. And this particular claim that this is built on this particular temple find reference in another book, which is the autobiography of Akbar, known as Ain-e-Akbari. Ain-e-Akbari. So this is one of the autobiography on Akbar, which was by his court person, Abul Fazl. So Abul Fazl had written this Ain Akbari autobiography, and he also has talked about this place, this Samal, and not exactly the mosque, but this particular place Samal, which is going to be the birthplace of Kalki. So this is also mentioned in the Ain Akbari, which is the autobiography of Akbar being done by Abul Fazl. So birthplace of Kalki, this is also mentioned here. So this shows, this can be used as a proof by the petitioners that that the Muslims were aware of the importance of this particular place. So, and if you will read more about this particular news, you will find out that there have been certain books, certain archaeological surveys done by Britishers of that time, that which have talked about that this particular mosque has been built over a temple only. But again, these are just evidences. There have been counter arguments and evidences also. Okay, so this is regarding your Sambal Masjid rule. Moving on to the next news. Next news is regarding ISRO says two Gagan Yatris finished initial training. So we are also eagerly waiting for our first human crewed mission. It is going to be India's first human crewed mission to the space, Gaganyaan, and two of the astronauts have finished their initial training. So I'm sure you must now remember the four persons who have been shortlisted for the Gaganyaan mission. So first person is your group captain, your Balakrishna Nayyar. Prashant Balakrishna Nayyar. Second person is going to be group captain your Angad Pratap. Third person is your group captain Ajit Krishna. And the fourth person who has been shortlisted is your group captain now. From wing commander, he has now been promoted to group captain, Shubhanshu Shukla. So these four persons have been shortlisted for Gaganyaan mission. Out of these two people, out of these four, two persons, your group captain Shubhanshu Shukla as the primary pilot and your group captain Prashant Balkrishna Nair as your backup pilot had been shortlisted for another mission by a private company of US, which is Axiom Space. So this is a private company and it's going to launch a particular mission which is known as Axiom 4. So Axiom Space in collab with SpaceX is launching a private space mission Axiom 4, and these two astronauts astronauts trainee for Gaganyaan have been shortlisted for Axiom 4 mission, and this news is regarding these two people only, that they have completed their initial training also. Okay, so this is also important for us. Moreover, if we talk about your Gaganyaan is a project by ISRO, and in this Gaganyaan mission, the rocket which ISRO is going to use is going to be the most powerful rocket, which is your LVM-3. LVM-3 is the name of the vehicle or the rocket which Gaganyaan-3s are going to use to be launched into space. So this particular human crewed mission is going to take these Gaganyaan-3s into a low Earth orbit at the height of 400 kilometers, and they are going to be in this orbit for 3 days. 3 days, and out of these four, three are going to be the main crewed members. Okay, so for 3 days these are going to be in this particular orbit only. Okay, and and basically if this program becomes successful, India is going to be the fourth country. India is going to become the fourth country after obviously Russia being the first, and at that time known as Soviet Union, then US and China. India is going to become the fourth country to have its own human crewed mission also. Okay, which would be a big thing for us. Okay, so this is an update regarding your Gaganyaan mission. So the next topic which we are going to do is regarding a particular case and a particular act, which is your Places of Worship Act of 1991. So this particular act was enacted in the backdrop of your Babri Masjid dispute. So this act was enacted in 1991 and your Babri Masjid was demolished on 6 December 1992. And what does this act exactly states? So it basically states that there would be no conversion of places of worship after the enactment of this particular act, and whatever is the religious character of a place of worship on August 15, 1947, whatever was the religious character of a place on August 15, 1947, that particular religious character is going to be intact for future also. Which means if on August 15, 1947, irrespective of what dispute has been there, if a particular place of worship has been a temple on August 15, 1947, this cannot be converted into a mosque or into a gurudwara, etc. And same is the case with other places of worship also. So this particular act was enacted because of the Babri Masjid dispute, because the Hindus were claiming that your Babri Masjid has been constructed on the Ram Janmabhoomi, or the place where your Lord Ram took birth. So, because already this particular case was ongoing, the Parliament, in its good sense, believed that there should not be any other cases also, because apart from Babri Masjid, there were other places of worship also, which have been cautioned to be places of importance for other religions also. So that in future there is no such similar cases, and which might have impact on the peace in this country. It was decided that it is better to enact a particular act and prohibit any such kind of activities of conversions and religious characters. Okay, so this particular act was enacted in 1991, and this particular act has been cautioned for its constitutionality. There have been many cases filed in your high courts and in your Supreme Court regarding the constitutionality of Places of Worship Act. And by last update, as the news also state, that caution of Place of Worship Act remain pending in Supreme Court for 4 years. So this particular case, whether this particular act is valid or not valid as per the Constitution, has been in the Supreme Court for the last 4 years, and there is no answer in sight as of now. But why this has become problematic? Because this particular Place of Worship Act states that if any kind of civil suit or a title suit is filed in a lower court, where there is a requirement of change, where the petitioner is arguing for change of religious character of a Place of Worship Act, such civil suits cannot be entertained. However, it does not prohibit determination of religious character. So this Places of Worship Act does not prohibit determination of places of worships. So let's say there is a particular mosque, and a particular party is arguing that it was a temple before, and it wants that there should be a survey being done to find out the religious character of this particular place on August 15, 1947. Then this particular act does not prohibit such determination. What does it prohibits? It prohibits a civil suit which wants a conversion of that place from let's say a temple to a mosque, or let's say vice versa also. Okay, so that's not prohibited. So what problem it has created is, because determination of place of worship is not prohibited, many lower courts in a hurry are allowing the archaeological survey or different bodies to do to do an exercise to determine the religious character of a place of worship, and what it is leading is to such kind of violence which is happening in Samal right now. Okay, the similar kind of violence was visible when such kind of exercise was allowed for Gyanvapi Mosque, as well as in the Shahi Idgah Mosque case also in Mathura. So here many authors have argued that in the Place of Worship Act, any kind of determination of the religious character of a place of worship should also be prohibited, because this might be misused by interested people in creating violence and taking political mileage out of it. Okay, so that is the whole case regarding the caution on Place of Worship Act. So it would be very good for the Supreme Court if it passes a judgment on the constitutional validity of Place of Worship Act and prohibit such kind of determination exercises also. Okay. Moving on to the next news, GST spurring fresh tax terrorism. So it is basically an article where former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramaniam has been interviewed, and he's talking about that your goods and services tax is basically becoming a case of tax terrorism, where the people are not happy with the tax. They want to pay tax, they want to behave legally, but because of different problems, they are so much terrorized by the tax system that they are now moving away from the taxation. Okay, so in this context, I thought let's discuss GST again. So your Goods and Services tax was introduced by 101st Constitutional Amendment Act of 2016, and it became applicable from 1st of April 2017. This is this GST replaced all of your indirect taxes from 1st April 2017. That is the reason why we celebrate 1st April as GST Day also. Okay, and this particular GST is implemented through the GST Council, which is a constitutional body created under Article 279 capital A. GST Council under Article 279A, which, and this GST Council is headed by your Union Finance Minister, and all the finance minister of different states and UTs with legislatures are members of this GST Council. Moreover, this GST, your goods and service tax, is of various kinds, majorly of three kinds. One is your central GST, which is implemented or which is put up by the central government. Next is your SGST, which is your state GST, which is implemented by the state government. And then there is your integrated GST, which is basically implemented, which is basically levied on interstate transfer or export goods also. Okay, so these are the three types of taxes. Moreover, there are five rates. There are five rates in GST, and the first one is 0%. There is a 5% rate also. There is a 12% rate also. There is a 18% rate also, and there is a 28% rate also. So these are the five rates under GST. And because this particular conference has been done by the former chief economic advisor, I would say you should know the current chief economic advisor also, which is V Ananta Nageshwaran. V Anant Nageshwaran is the current chief economic advisor. Okay. Okay, let's look at one news from Indian Express also. This is the final news. Historical bill attracts 330 votes in favor and 275 against, giving a choice. UK MPs vote in favor of assisted dying bill for terminally ill adults. So UK has become another country which has now legalized assisted suicide in specific cases. Okay, so it becomes one thing which you need to understand is, what is, do you understand by assisted suicide? What do you understand by euthanasia? What is the difference between your active euthanasia and passive euthanasia? Which are the countries which have legalized active euthanasia? Which are the countries which have legalized passive euthanasia? Which countries have legalized assisted suicide? And what is the status of these particular things in India, whether they are legal or illegal in India? So first, let's understand the current news, which is UK's news, which has basically allowed assisted suicide for terminally ill patients. Terminally ill patients who have less than 6 months left to live. 6 months left, who have 6 months left to live, can opt for assisted suicide. So that is what has been passed by UK's House of Commons. Now this bill is going to go to House of Lords, which is the upper house in the British Parliament, and then it is going to finally be passed by the British Parliament. Okay, and then this would be a law in UK also. So one thing which you should understand is that there is a difference between assisted suicide and euthanasia. Many of you who have been regular in classes um, must be aware of what is passive euthanasia and what is active euthanasia. But what is the difference of assisted suicide? So the main difference between assisted suicide and euthanasia is that in assisted suicide, a person another helps another individual, helps the individual who is getting assisted suicide, helps to end their life. A person helps individual to end their life, but the final act is by the individual only. For example, if you are helping someone to have assisted suicide, you might be the one who is supplying them with the injection which is going to kill them, with the lethal injection which is going to kill them, or a particular medicine or a particular chemical which might help them to have a peaceful death. So in that particular case, you are not directly involved in killing that person. You are passively doing something but not actively helping that person to die. So in that particular case, it is would be a case of assisted suicide, which has now been allowed, which is being allowed in the UK Parliament. On the other hand, you have euthanasia, and euthanasia is of two types. One is active and passive. So what exactly is active or passive euthanasia? So in both the cases, there are medical professionals involved, and in case of active euthanasia, the medical professional directly administers the lethal dose, administers a lethal dose to end a person's life. Okay, so a medical professional. So if active euthanasia is being administered, medical professional is going to administer a lethal dose to end a person's life. Unlike assisted suicide, where the decision whether he wants to end a particular life in a specific way, it is going to be taken by that person himself only. Okay, so in this particular case, in active euthanasia case, there is active involvement of a third party, but in assisted suicide, there is no active involvement of the third party. What about passive euthanasia? So in passive euthanasia, medical professional is not going to administer a lethal dose, etc., but he is going to remove any kind of life support system. For example, if someone is on a ventilator, so in case of passive euthanasia, that life support system would be removed. Life support system is going to be removed in passive euthanasia, and that person can have a normal death. And in case of India, passive euthanasia, it is the passive euthanasia which is allowed, and in India we do not allow active euthanasia or your assisted suicide, but passive euthanasia etc. is allowed. Okay, so remember India's case also. Apart from it, you should be aware that certain countries which had legalized assisted suicide. So the first country which has allowed assisted suicide long back in 1942 was Switzerland. So Switzerland was the first country to allow assisted suicide. Apart from it, it is certain states in USA, states, not all the states. So there are state specific laws in US. Some states have allowed assisted suicide also in US. Apart from it, Germany, Canada, and Austria allow assisted suicide. Okay. When it comes to active euthanasia, where a medical professional is assisting uh, in killing a person, that is allowed again in your Netherlands, being the first country. Netherlands in 2002. Belgium also allowed it in 2002. After Belgium, it was Luxembourg which allowed it in 2009. So Netherlands and Belgium both in 2002, Luxembourg in 2009, Canada in 2021, and Spain and New Zealand in 2021. Okay, so in many countries now active euthanasia has also become acceptable, specifically the countries which are mentioned here. And finally, the countries where your your passive euthanasia is allowed. So obviously I'm going to talk about India, which allows passive euthanasia in specific cases. For example, it should be a state of permanent vegetation. Basically, a particular person is kind of brain dead exactly, and is dependent on others for their day-to-day activities, and he or she is on a life support system. So if the life support system is removed, then he or she is going to have a normal death, unlike active euthanasia where some lethal dose is provided. So India has legalized passive euthanasia. All the countries which allow active euthanasia allow your passive. So all these countries allow passive euthanasia. So it is your India, Italy, Germany, and Switzerland. So interestingly, Switzerland allows your assisted suicide, it allows passive euthanasia, but it does not allow active euthanasia as of now. Okay, and try to understand this particular difference between assisted suicide, your active euthanasia, and passive euthanasia. And the simple difference is that in assisted suicide, the third party is not actively involved in giving any kind of lethal dose. The final decision is made by that individual only. In case of active euthanasia, a medical professional is actively involved in providing a lethal dose and in exacerbating the death of a particular person. In case of passive euthanasia, uh, a lethal dose is no lethal dose provided, but any kind of life support system on a person who is in a permanent vegetative state is basically that life support system is removed and that person can have a natural death, which is also the case in India also. Okay. So student, with this we are done with today's news analysis. I hope this initiative, specifically I'm now talking to people who are giving attempt tomorrow only. So I hope this initiative have been useful for you all. If this has been useful, you can give a thumbs up also to this particular video. Okay. So best of luck to students who are giving your exam tomorrow only. And I hope to see you soon with flying colors. Okay. Thank you and have a very nice day.